Hi guys. We continue to put the foundation on the case with your client. You can remember the hypothetical client we have. You get the trademark he, she proposes. You got the business strategy. You got something, and what is their own proposal, what they want to do, what they want from you. And you get all kind of information, and you got about the absolute grounds obstacles in the last video, right? So you know already a lot. Now you want to look at likelihood of confusion. Is that the same term in your jurisdiction as well? Likelihood of confusion is a term which has not been coined legally. It is not placed in an article of the trademark regulation. It is evolved, it came from legal evolvement from the General Court of the European Union, and it has been developed over time. Likelihood of confusion has different aspects. You know the triangle I told you in the last video on the absolute grounds? Well, there's a kind of triangle here as well. You have in the triangle, in the mix on how this analysis is done on likelihood of confusion, you have three parts which are on top the relevant consumers, you know that. On one part there is the trademarks, the two trademarks, at least two trademarks, there might be more. And on the other part, there are the goods and services which have to be compared one with the other. So this is one triangle in which every opposition would normally start with to look at. And then you would go into the analysis on the distinctiveness of the earlier mark. Right? On the mark on which the opposition is being based on, or on the marks, there may be more. And at the end, you put all this into the equation, that what the examiner would do, all put this into the equation and look what would be the overall picture with regard to the comparison of the both marks. Are they sufficiently so from the overall standpoint of view, are they sufficiently similar or not in order to confuse the consumer? You got the big picture? Is that the same thing in your jurisdiction? I insist always on that, because you will be able to understand better and explain to your client what to expect from Europe. You will understand the European lawyer, if you have one, with which you are corresponding or treating a case in front of EU IPO or the General Court or whatever. And you will be able to know exactly what to expect from the next step and serve better your client. That is all about, right? You want to serve your client at the highest level. And if you do that, the client will be satisfied, will appreciate this, and will stick with you. So this is for the long-term building. We have not filed anything yet. We are still in our analysis in order to build the best case for your client and to save money on the account of your client. You would not go to filing something which will be opposed tomorrow. So you have the filing fees, the opposition fees, the lawyer fees, and and the client will be dissatisfied because its trademark has been rejected. You don't want that outcome with your first client, right? Or with the first contact of that client. The client will not come back. So what do you want is to understand, and you remember what is the 96 million database of EU IPO I told you in one of the previous videos. 96 million in all kind of jurisdictions, including China. 96 million trademarks. So you can use the search engine of that database. And then you can make, in an informed way, because the content of today's video is very important, in an informed way, you can search for the right criteria in order to assess whether there is a danger with regard to future opposition danger with regard to certain trademarks or not. You can avoid this from the beginning, and that is what I call a solid foundation. Now let's look into the nitty-gritty of the log of likelihood of confusion. The consumers. So the consumers, there are two aspects with regard to the relevant consumers. Relevant consumers are those consumers who are interested to buy these goods or services for which the conflicting trademarks are registered or being applied for. Relevant consumers, so if it is food, if it is some drinks or so, what you find in the supermarket, this is the end consumer. And the end consumer, normally, they would have a low level of intention for low-priced goods. If the impact is higher, so if they want to buy a car, then the 50,000 euros or so, then the attention degree, the degree of attention is very high because it has a high impact for the consumers. Now, if the goods are, I don't know, tractors for farming or so, then it would be different because you would have professional consumers. Also, the impact is high because the career is on the line. If you have a wholesale buyer or so, then the level of attention is higher. So, professional consumers, general end consumers, low, average, high attention level. Why is this important? So they would, with a high attention level, they would look at the different, so to say, the different aspects of the trademark. They would look into details, etc. Whereas if the attention level is low, they would just grab it and superfluously appreciate what is the trademark. So this is the first triangle point, right? Second triangle point, we go to the trademarks. And within the trademarks, you have weak parts, distinctive parts, dominant parts, and secondary parts. So what is one and the other? Distinctive part, as you know, which is not elusive, which is not descriptive for anything, which is attractive in its attention, which is not simple, so to say, the interrogation mark that is too simple in order to be highly distinctive. And then you would have a weak elements, which are ornamental lines or some picture in the background or so. Then you would have dominant parts, so which spring into your eye, which is on the first place. When a complex trademark, you have on top of it something, so would be dominant if it is placed prominently, a dominant part, or a secondary part, which is on the down part and small letters or so, that would be a secondary. Now the different trademarks would be analyzed as to its weak and strong elements, as to its dominant and secondary elements. And then they would come together and say, well, let us analyze now from the visual, the oral, and the conceptual content of the different trademarks. Visual, just visual. Oral, how you would pronounce the trademark. If they have letters, then you can pronounce the trademarks. If they are Chinese letters, you cannot pronounce the trademarks because it is not one of the 23 languages, right? And conceptual, what is the concept behind of the letter, the meaning, so to say, the meaning of the trademark? What does the trademark suggest conceptually to you? That would be the idea. Now, if there is coincidence in one and the other, in the dominant and the weak, and the conceptual and the visual, and that will come into the mix. And then you would look at it, well, what does the mix say? It is visually similar, but oral completely different, and conceptually there's no link at all. Well, it could be lowly similar, the marks, or it could be average similar, or it could be highly similar, or it could be even dissimilar. Right? So that is second point, the trademarks. And then you have the third point, which would be the goods and services. So we have the Nice Agreement. You know what the Nice Agreement is? Do you have the Nice Agreement as well? Well, we have the Nice Agreement for administrative purposes. We have the 45 goods and services and classes, but we do not apply if one is in class 9 and other is in 25, so it's different, it's dissimilar due to that fact. No, it's not dissimilar due to that fact. There are the different criteria, the purpose of the goods or services, or the nature of the goods and services, or the consumers to which it is directed, the goods and services. So these come together, different criteria come into a mix, and then you would determine whether the goods and services are similar or not. So one side remark here is that if the goods are not similar, then the analysis would stop here. So you need, in order to have likelihood of confusion, at least the goods or services must be similar, or the trademarks must be similar. If one of them are dissimilar, then there is no likelihood of confusion. Is that clear? If now some goods are similar and some goods are dissimilar, then the analysis would only continue for the similar goods. The dissimilar goods are already out. Now let's move forward quickly. Time goes by. So we are coming now to the distinctiveness of the earlier mark. That is part of the equation for the likelihood of confusion. The distinctiveness of the early mark can be low, can be average, or can be high, depending on if it is inherently distinctive, it is weak, elusive, descriptive, or so. Then you would say low inherent distinctiveness. If there is a reputation, for example, has been heavily used in the market, and the opponent has put some evidence beforehand that it has been heavily used, or it is famous or so, then it gets reputation and a higher level of earlier distinctiveness. So you may guess the higher the distinctiveness, the higher is the likelihood of confusion to be confirmed, right? So you have the whole mix now. Everything, the three triangles plus the distinctiveness of the earlier mark, and then you will see that the examiner will look at the overall picture and will say, well, this and that and this criteria, and that is important, etc. And they will come to either likelihood of confusion or not. If likelihood of confusion, well, the application goes out. If not, the application will be registered. Maybe more than one opposition ground, so they maybe have other marks and will continue with other marks. So I have made decisions of 50 pages with 20 earlier marks or so. That can be quite difficult sometimes. So that was the main part I wanted to tell you. It is very complicated probably. But once you get into that thinking, it will come very easily when you see an earlier mark and is there likelihood of confusion or not. That will be trigger automatically something like a thinking process, which then will lead you to one conclusion and to the other. And as I said before, then from then onwards, you may choose to suggest your client to change your mark, to contact the other with an earlier mark which you consider similar, to see whether there's an opposition danger, so to say. So there are different strategies coming out of this, but the basis analysis is this. Is that different in your home jurisdiction? Well, I'm interested to know this, but this is something which has been evolved from the case law and is being applied by the examiner. by the appeal, by the General Court, and by the Court of Justice. So thanks for tuning in and keep up. Congratulations, you have gone so very far.